You just met someone. They told you their name. You smiled. You nodded. You even repeated it back once out loud, specifically so you wouldn't forget it. And then 30 seconds later, it is completely gone. Not fuzzy, not almost there, gone. Like it was never in your head at all. And now you are standing in the middle of a conversation, nodding and laughing at the right moments, while a quiet internal panic is running underneath everything. Because you have no idea what their name is. And you are going to have to navigate this entire interaction, maybe the next 20 minutes, without using it once. And somehow you are going to have to do it without them noticing. You have done this before. You are very good at it by now. But here is what nobody has ever told you about why it keeps happening. It is not because you weren't paying attention. It is because you were paying attention to everything except the one thing that was easiest to measure. Stay with this. Because what you are about to hear is going to change how you see yourself in every social situation you have ever quietly felt ashamed of. Let's start by breaking something most people assume without ever questioning. The assumption that forgetting a name means you didn't care, that if you were truly present, truly interested, the name would have stayed. This assumption feels logical. It is also almost completely wrong. And the research that explains why it is wrong will make you see your own brain completely differently. Here is what is actually happening in the first 30 seconds of meeting someone new. Your brain is not listening for a name. Your brain is doing something far more ancient, far more urgent, and far more important to your survival than storing a word. It is reading. It is scanning the person in front of you at a speed you have no conscious access to. It is reading whether their smile reaches their eyes or stops at their mouth. Whether their energy is genuine or performed, whether this person is safe or whether something about them requires caution, it is building a complete psychological picture of who this person might be in the same 3 seconds that their name is passing through your ears. And your brain doing all of that simultaneously lets the name go. Not because you weren't there, because you were too busy doing the thing your brain was actually designed to do. The first thing psychology says about people who forget names, and this is the part that almost nobody has ever told you, is that name forgetting is directly linked to how deeply you process the people you meet. A 2018 study published in the journal Memory found a consistent and striking pattern. People who scored lowest on name recall tests, the worst name rememberers in the study, scored significantly higher on tests measuring emotional and contextual memory, the kind of memory that holds on to the feeling of a conversation. The moment when something shifted, the expression on someone's face when they said something that actually mattered to them, the slight change in someone's energy when a topic got too close to something real. The people who forget names, the study found, are very often the people who remember everything else, not the label, the person. And that distinction is not a deficit. That is a completely different and in many ways far richer way of holding on to the world. The second thing is something neuroscientists have been documenting for decades. Names are genuinely the hardest category of information for the human brain to retain. This is not opinion. This is one of the most replicated findings in memory research. It even has a name, the Baker-Baker paradox. In the original study, researchers told one group of participants that a man in a photograph was a baker. They told another group that the man's surname was Baker. Days later, the people who were told his profession remembered it easily. The people who were told his name had almost entirely forgotten it. Same word, completely different retention. Because when you hear that someone is a baker, your brain immediately connects it to everything you already know about bakers. The smell of bread, the early mornings, the flour. The word arrives with hooks, with context, with meaning already attached. But the name Baker as a surname connects to nothing. It floats in complete isolation and isolated information. Information with no emotional or contextual hooks to hang on to is the first thing the brain releases. Every single time. You are not failing at memory. You are experiencing exactly what happens when the human brain encounters a category of information it was never particularly designed to prioritize. The third thing is about attention. And this is the one that will make you stop apologizing immediately. The moment someone tells you their name, Your brain is running 5 separate processes at once. It is managing your own response, deciding what to say next. It is reading their face, picking up emotional information below the surface. It is handling the low level social anxiety that almost everyone feels in new interactions. The slight performance of being introduced. It is deciding how much of yourself to show in the first 30 seconds. It is tracking the full environmental context, who else is in the room, what the dynamic is, where this conversation might go. And the name, which arrives in one single second, never gets the undivided attention. It would need to properly consolidate into memory. Researchers call this attentional capture. When cognitive load is high, which it always is in new social situations, brief single burst information is almost always the first to be lost. You were present. Your brain was simply too full of everything else that mattered to catch the name on its way through. Now, here is the uncomfortable part. The part I want you to sit with. Because this one might actually sting a little. The people who are best at remembering names. The ones who always seem to get it right, who use your name 3 times in the first minute, are very often not more present than you. They are not warmer. They are not more genuinely interested. They have a system. They repeat the name immediately out loud. They attach it to a visual. David has a dimple, Sarah has a silver ring. They use it deliberately in the next few sentences to reinforce it. It is a memorization technique, a learned protocol, not a natural gift, not evidence of a more caring personality, a technique. And you have spent years feeling quietly ashamed of yourself, measuring yourself against people who are running a memory system and concluding that you must not care enough. When actually, you were never playing the same game they were. You were somewhere else entirely, reading the person, feeling the room, doing the thing that cannot be turned into a 3-step system. Here is something almost nobody talks about. The elaborate invisible architecture you have built to manage this. The strategies so practiced they happen automatically now. You know the pause. The specific pause that happens when you are about to introduce someone to a third person at a party and their name should come out right here. And instead you go slightly silent. And you hold the silence just long enough, hoping desperately that they will step forward and introduce themselves. And they do. And you exhale. And nobody noticed. You know the redirect? Where someone asks you, wait, what is her name again? And you say, oh, you should just ask her directly. She loves meeting people. And somehow that works every single time. You know, the search. The way you scan someone's face when you see them again. Reaching back through everything you remember about them. The conversation you had, the way they laughed, the thing they said that stuck with you. Trying to find the name somewhere in all of that. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. But you always remember the person. You have been managing this invisibly your entire life. And almost no one around you has ever noticed. Because you became very, very good at it very early on. Here is what all of this actually means. Your memory is not broken. It is organized differently than most people's. Research on memory styles consistently shows that people who struggle with arbitrary label memory, names, numbers, dates, very often have unusually strong episodic and emotional memory. They remember how something felt with vivid accuracy years later. They remember the exact moment in the middle of a conversation where something shifted from surface to real. They remember what someone was wearing the first time they met them. They remember the look on someone's face when they said something that hurt them, even when that person has long since forgotten they said it. Their memory is not worse. It is organized around meaning rather than labels, around experience rather than data, around people rather than their names. And in a world that measures attention by whether you remembered the label, that kind of memory gets mistaken for carelessness, when actually it is one of the most human forms of remembering that exists. So the next time you're standing in front of someone whose name has already disappeared, running your quiet, invisible strategy to get through the conversation without them noticing, I want you to remember this. You are not failing at being present. You are not failing at caring. You are experiencing the natural result of a brain that was busy doing something more complex, more layered, more genuinely attentive to the actual human in front of you than the arbitrary word assigned to them at birth. The name didn't make it through, but the person did. And that is the thing that actually matters. You were never bad with names. You were just too busy being good with people.